Welcome back to the Something in the Wilderness podcast. My name's Steve, and this is a podcast where I discuss each of Andrew McMahon's songs from throughout his career, one by one. Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been here before, I want to thank you for listening. Today, I have a guest with me to talk about an album track from about 15 years ago on what's probably considered a very special album in the Andrew catalog. Tanner and I connected recently, and he told me about this passionate group of friends he has that have been following Andrew's music since the Something Corporate days. So, welcome to the show, Tanner.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Glad to have you. So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I live in Gilbert, Arizona, suburb of Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
I work for a medical transport company, which is kind of like the middleman between like an ambulance and an Uber. So we have stretchers, we have wheelchairs. We go pick up people who like broke hips, femurs, who just like can't physically like get themselves to doctor's offices or from the hospital to like physical therapy, like that kind of stuff. So
Gotcha.
I've been doing that for about 8 to 10 years with some other stuff kind of sprinkled in.
Cool.
And yeah.
Well, tell me about how you got into Andrew McMahon's music.
I was probably like 12 years old. So this is I'm 31 right now. So this is back in like the early 2000s. I have two older brothers, and I don't know if you have any older siblings, but I think early on you get most of your music from them and you hear what they're listening to and you're just like, "Oh, I got to get that. I got to how can I listen to that?" When they're gone, you like sneak their burned CDs and their stuff and you're just like, yeah. And so I remember there was one burned CD that one of my brother's friends made that had like I woke up in a car, Hurricane, and the Astronaut. I remember those three songs in particular. And then like also there was like Blink 182 on the burn CD. There was like Linkin Park. And so like,
Your brother had good taste.
Yeah, my brother's friend. That was always how it was. It was like
that was his friend. Okay.
Yeah, the friends gave the burn CDs to them. And so I heard these like three songs and they stuck out in particular because like the piano and then you have like those like lyrics and stuff that are just like very unique and very personal. And I think I like asked my brother and he's like, yeah, this is a band called Something Corporate. And I remember they were like playing in Flagstaff at some like small festival up north. And so my brother was like going to that concert. So they kind of stuck out. And then a local radio station had what they called like the top 10 most requested songs of the day.
Okay.
Every single night at 10 o'clock. So it was 10 o'clock, top 10 songs requested. And like number 4 one night, I would always listen to it like going to sleep and stuff. And one night they played Ruthless for the first time. And I'd never heard that song, but like instantly you kind of know, you're like, this is the same guy who did that I woke up in the car.
Right. His voice is pretty recognizable.
Yeah, yeah. And like at the same time, there's like, as Maps, and there's like Blink 182, like I said earlier, and there's Modest Mouse, like all on the same radio station, and always like played at like 10 o'clock because they were like big hits in Arizona and like America and the world and stuff. But then like there's this one song, Ruthless, that just like stood out and was so good. And back then you don't like Google stuff, I don't remember that, but like I started asking my brothers,
I
like
think that was early
a little later. Yeah, maybe like a couple years later or whatever. But like I started going, hey, I got to listen to more of these guys. And so my brother like burned me Leaving Through the Window and North. And yeah, that's kind of the start of my obsession with Andrew McMahon.
That's awesome, man. I wish my brother had a slightly better taste in music when I was growing up, but he liked some of that stuff. Like he was into Blink and I think still is. He was into Linkin Park. He was into some of the Green Day for sure. But he was also into things like ICP and NWA and Eazy-E when we were in high school, like in the 90s. So like there was some of that stuff I was like, okay, I'm kind of going the other way with some of this music.
Sure.
So we could meet in the middle on some things, but he had no clue who Something Corporate was and probably still doesn't. But definitely what you said is true. Like earlier on, middle school, early high school, I'd kind of pay attention to what my brother was listening to and what their friends were doing. But I actually probably gained more musical taste from the older brother and older sister of my best friend at the time, because they were kind of more into the kind of music that we were looking for, like punk and grunge. But
oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for older siblings.
Yeah, right. So tell me about your group of friends that you hang with that listen to Andrew McMahon. Like, how did that all come together? Because man, I tell you what, I've introduced some people to Andrew McMahon in my own personal life, but I don't feel like I have an Andrew McMahon group of friends in my personal life. So,
So there is a kind of like a local venue, I think very, very small,
mhm.
in Phoenix called the Rebel Lounge.
Okay.
It might have a different name. It's been long enough, and I wasn't a part of this group, but something corporate. That was like their early, early tours. So they would go to Phoenix and they would play in this place, this small little venue. And so, like something corporate, like got pretty big here. And like I said, like they were like requested on the radio and everything.
Hmm.
So I have one older brother who is 3 years older and one who's 4 years older,
Okay.
and all of their friends started getting into something corporate at the same time.
Cool.
And I was friends with their little brothers. And so naturally, we're all like, when we get together, we're like 12 years old, 13 years old,
Hmm.
junior high. And we're all like, wait, you listen to something corporate too? Oh, you listen to something corporate too?
Hmm.
And Gilbert is like a suburbs of Phoenix. And so, like, most of us have stayed here, all have had jobs here. Like, some of us went to school other places, but all throughout high school, early college, whenever like a new Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness song dropped or an album, and even before that, when like Jack's Mannequin was coming out, it was like instantly you're texting your friend and you're like, "What do you think? What do you think of this? What do
Hmm.
you think of that?" And then when
Yeah.
they're coming into town, yeah, you're getting text messages that are like, "Hey, just saw they're touring here. We got to go see them." And
Yeah.
so I have some like pretty special experiences seeing first Jack's Mannequin, then that 2010 like something corporate reunion, and then like on from there, yeah, Wilderness stuff and
Yeah.
more something corporate reunion shows. I was at that Las Vegas show.
Right. Yeah, we got to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, we do.
You guys are still going to see Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness on his tours today?
We are. Absolutely.
That's so cool.
We saw that Dashboard Confessional, and I can't even remember what that tour was called, and Andrew McMahon.
Yeah, Hello Gone Days.
Yeah, and it was so good. You know what? I brought my wife, who was a huge Dashboard fan, and she hadn't
Nice.
really gotten into any of the Andrew McMahon stuff,
Hmm.
and she loved Dashboard, but then I was like very unsure. I'm like, how is she going to react to Andrew
Hmm.
McMahon? And when we left the venue, she like looked at me and she was like, I really like Dashboard, but oh my gosh, that Wilderness band was so good. And she
Yeah.
was kind of just like blown away. And that was like, that kind of like confirmed my belief. I'm like, anyone who likes music can go see this guy. And even if they
Hmm.
don't know the songs, like just
Yep.
his stage presence, you're like, man, this
It's
guy's kind of
exciting.
like, yeah, yeah. And
It's
he's
so
like
exciting to
involves the
watch.
crowd so
Yeah.
well too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the and then yeah, I had friends come to that concert, and like my brother, like yeah, still my older brothers went with their wives, and my little
That's so
brother and
cool.
my little sister came, like all family and friends and everything.
Yeah.
So it's been a real good community. You have 15 people you can text being like, "Do you want to go to this show? You want to go to this show?" And like
That's so cool.
you're gonna get at least 5 to 10 of them who are like, "I'm in."
We got a few friends locally and then some up north in Cleveland, which is about 2 hour drive that are, and I've got some friends down in Cincy as well, another 2 hour drive. But yeah, we don't have this like core group that we're all like, oh, we're all going to the Andrew show. But it kind of turned into that the last New Friends show I went to, which actually was very cool. So that's nice that you have that.
Because he's so good with his fans and his band is so good. Like all of his bands are just like so like you can tell they like appreciate their fans. Like I think it causes like these communities to form up of people who are just so passionate, who are also just so nice. If you pay any attention to Andrew McMahon and his music, you're like, oh, this is like a nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy like really cares. And so yeah.
Yeah, you can tell just, I mean, looking at, I mean, even if you're not on, like, I'm on Camp Wilderness, but even if you're not on there, like, just looking at his Instagram videos and, like, when he talks to people, when he's in interviews, like, you can tell he's just so kind. Like you said, he really cares about people. I completely agree with that. The fact that he, like, waits or he hangs out after shows with fans and things like that, it's just, I don't know too many artists that go to that extra length to kind of be there with the fans. You know what I mean?
All right, I got a funny story about that. You want to hear my after show experience with Andrew McMahon?
Definitely.
2010 reunion something corporate show, and like they'd only been broken up what 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around there. So like, but if you're like a teenager 5 years feels like forever. And so like when you
Forever, yeah.
find out that Andrew McMahon is coming to town with something corporate, you're like, I have to go. And I grew up like in a very religious family, and like most of my friends, very religious family.
Mm-hmm.
And Sunday was like a day that's like, hey, you don't go anywhere. You go to church, you come
Mm-hmm.
home, that's it.
Family day.
Family day. But something corporate show was Sunday night. So I'm not kidding, probably 12, maybe more, man, of my friends. Yeah, there was like, yeah, like there's probably more. There's probably 15, 16 people. We all came up with like pretty elaborate lies just so we could go to this show. So it's like you're telling one parent, you're like, yeah, I'm going to Brandon's house, and you're telling another parent, because you're gone. Like we were wanted like front row, standing room type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So we're gonna be gone from like 12 in the afternoon till midnight,
Oh,
basically. So
wow.
we're all
How in
coming
the
up
world
with
do you
these,
get away with that?
you know, I don't know. I don't know. None of us got caught, but we all did that. And we all had to get, like, no one said, yeah, I'm going to a concert, because that's like number one, like, oh, you can't go to a rock show on a
Mm-hmm.
Sunday.
Yeah.
So we go, we're front row, and it was like the best experience. But during walking by, the rest of the band leaves. Andrew like tells the story of meeting his wife, and we're all like up against the rail. And so the song's very emotional. He's playing piano by himself. And we look over, and there is a security guard to our right who is, I don't know how to say it. Like, there was a girl dancing up on the security guard in a very inappropriate way
Uh-huh.
during like one of his most emotional songs
During walking by?
during walking by.
Oh boy.
And so, and like it's front, like right, not front and center, but like just barely over to the right of Andrew. And we're all, instead of like paying attention to this, like one of my favorite songs, like a song like I fell in love with like
You're very
very young.
distracted.
Everyone is very distracted, and like Andrew is very into the song, but he also is noticing us.
Oh my God.
And as soon as the song ends, he stands up, goes off mic, and just like crouches in front of us. He's like, dude, what's going on? Like, not in like a angry way, but in a very like, I just like genuinely want to know. I'm confused. So we pointed out the security guard, and he starts laughing so hard. He can't stop laughing. He walks over to his piano. He tells like his lights guys, like, hey, shine it over here, right on the
Mm-hmm.
security guard. All the other security guards in the venue are just dying laughing too. And he is so cool about it. He's like, like I thought I was just going to be singing songs about love when I came here to this show. Instead, we're causing love to happen right over here. And so after the show, we're all waiting for him. And I'm kind of like, oh man, he's going to recognize us. And like, I hope he doesn't like get upset or anything. But he walks out, and instantly he's like, my guys, what's up? And he starts laughing with us and like talking about the whole security guard thing. And then like literally like we started asking questions about like the new Jack's Mannequin record that was like not out yet. And he started like
Mm-hmm.
telling us like some like stuff about people and things, and was like telling us about like, oh yeah, I'm like getting this little like cabin or like house in the desert, and we're gonna go and just jam out for a couple weeks. And
Mm-hmm.
he was just so cool about it. And so I don't know. That was a pretty special experience at like 18 years old. Like you're like talking to
Yeah.
one of your heroes, and he's just like so cool.
So
And
chill, yeah. He
yeah,
talks to you
yeah,
like a regular human being, you know?
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I gotta know that, like, maybe you don't know the answer, but like, what was up with the girl dancing on the security guard? Like, did they know each other?
No, I talked to a different security. I did some investigative work. I talked to another security guard afterwards, and he was like, he didn't touch her. He like just stand perfectly still.
Yeah, like a security guard does.
Yeah, he was a married guy.
Oh no.
And that's why the security guards were laughing. They're like, he's married, and I think she was on maybe some drugs or something. Like I
Probably.
don't know
That's
if
what it
she
sounds
even,
like.
yeah, yeah. And so it was kind of, you don't really forget about that.
No, no, no. That's unfortunate that it happened during your one of your favorite songs of all time, but it's also a good
Yeah.
story on the other hand. So,
It's both. It's both. Yeah. It
yeah.
was
Yeah.
unfortunate because that is like another song that like one of those like amazing songs on an EP that you find years later after hearing the like, initial Leaving Through the Window or North, and you're like, I didn't know this existed. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, how did this get left out? That's my story.
Oh, that's a lot of fun. Thanks for sharing. Well, let's talk about this song we're going to talk about. So we've talked a little bit about something corporate, but we're going to move into the Jack's Mannequin era. I got to admit, I don't have any significant history with this particular song we're going to talk about, so I'm actually really glad that you invited me to talk about it on the podcast. So the song came out in 2008. The only specific memory I have of it, and this is going to sound weird, is that I haven't really thought about it too much at all. When I hear the name of the song and I hear the song, I'm just like, yeah, it's a song, but we'll get there. I'll give more opinions as we go. But mainly when I think of this song and listening to it back then, I think of where my computer was situated in my apartment, because we only lived there the 1 year, and it was the year Glass Passenger came out, or the year after, actually. So I remember that was what was on a lot on my computer, which was right in the living room. But I do remember being surprised by the dynamics of this song and how different it was from everything else that I'd heard from Jack's Mannequin up until that point, that I'd heard from Andrew up until that point, actually. Not typical at all. The song we're talking about today is Bloodshot, and it was on the Glass Passenger. It was actually track 8. That album was released on September 30th, 2008. It was first released as track 2 on the Ghost Overground EP, released a month earlier on August 5th. Now, I must have bought the Ghost Overground EP on iTunes because I mentioned on the show before that I've always thought of the Resolution as track 1 because that's how it was in iTunes. It always said track 1 on it, so it put itself ahead of everything else on Glass Passenger. But I don't remember Bloodshot. I don't remember thinking about Bloodshot as track 2. I've always thought of it as like a later mid-album track. So I don't know if I paid even too much attention to it when I heard it on Ghost Overground. But again, I just felt like it was so different. Like, what was do you remember your first reaction to this song when you first heard it?
Yeah, so I heard it from the Ghost Overground first
Mm-hmm.
off. Like I said earlier, especially in your teenage years, 3 years from Everything in Transit to Glass Passenger, like it felt so long.
Yeah,
It felt so long, and like especially because like you hear about his cancer, and like that's a big thing too. Like you're just like, oh my gosh, like one of my favorite musicians has cancer,
mm-hmm.
and so you're kind of like waiting. And so the Ghost Overground EP comes out, and you hear the Resolution, and that feels like such a almost expected song after
Yeah,
cancer. You're just like, yeah,
totally.
this is carrying the message of like fighting and trying to get over something that's so hard and can affect not only like you but your family and everything. And it's very much like I feel like on the nose the Resolution. It's like, yeah, this is just what I expected. Then Bloodshot, I remember hearing it for the first time and kind of like being like knocked on my butt, just being like, oh, this is like what I want from the Glass Passenger. I want this like kind of weird sounding song that I feel like is a little bit more hidden talking about the cancer,
Mm-hmm.
but still like in that same vein as the Resolution in a way. And so I just remember being like that, like I like the Resolution. I love Bloodshot right away. And like all my
Wow. All right.
friends liked Bloodshot too. Like we would play Resolution loud in the car and then we'd play Bloodshot even louder. That's what I remember.
That's so cool. I'm so glad you're here to talk about this song because, like I said, I don't really have a history with it, I don't feel. And I don't hear a lot of people talk about this song. So it was interesting to me when you reached out and you're like, Bloodshot's the one I want to talk about. I was like, okay, let's do this, man. That same EP, The Ghost Overground, I loved it because it had those acoustic tracks on it too, Holiday from Rio
Yeah,
and
yeah.
was it Kill the Messenger?
Mhm.
And they were just perfect. They just sounded perfect.
They sound so good. They still do.
Yeah, so that EP had a little bit of everything, right? It had the new song, the new single, The Resolution, and then it had this kind of weird off kilter song to me, and then it had like 2 throwbacks to a few years before, some of the best songs, arguably, on Everything in Transit, redone in an acoustic fashion. But yeah, so it was an exciting time, and we'll talk about the other EPs around that time too. The Glass Passenger was originally recorded in late 2007, early 2008. I read earlier today, and I didn't know this. I don't know if you know anything about this, if you were aware of this at the time. But did you know that the Glass Passenger release date was pushed back a couple of times?
Yes.
Okay, I had never heard that before, but I mean, of all places, I read it on Wikipedia. You think I would have come across this before, but I haven't until today. Or maybe I overlooked it.
Did you read why?
No, so I don't know why.
Oh, it's so interesting. And I think it's like it ties in perfectly with Bloodshot
Oh
and
my
like
gosh.
obviously the rest of the album. So this is like why I feel like this song is like the center of the Glass Passenger.
Interesting.
So have you heard about the Lost Journal? This is like
No.
conspiracy stuff.
Going deep. Take me down the rabbit hole.
If you get a chance, I don't think it's on like Apple Podcasts, but it's on Spotify. I think it's called the AP Podcast. Go listen to it. It's one of like Andrew McMahon's first podcasts like he'd ever done, I think, or at least it's the first one I heard. And it's old. It's like it's before People and Things. It's before the Something Corporate. It's like probably '09, I'm guessing, but it's before the Something Corporate Union. But he talks about how I think they'd done a lot of recording of like the sound, the actual music for the Glass Passenger.
Mm-hmm.
But lyrically, I don't think he had put a lot of like words to music just yet. And so he had this journal that was like just key after his cancer and after like in preparation for the Glass Passenger.
Okay.
And he was on an airplane and he left the journal. And he leaves the journal, like gets off, and he is probably like still in the airport when he realizes he left it. And he runs back, gets the crew, and they start looking for the journal. Couldn't find it. Gone. And in that podcast, he talks about how like it really like affected him. Like it totally like it was like, all right, we're gonna like stop recording right now. I need to clear my head.
Mm-hmm.
And he also talks about how like it might have been like kind of a good thing. Like I think I said like he had some lyrics down already and recorded, but not all. And I think he said like the album was getting kind of dark or too dark. And losing this journal was kind of a good thing. But it was also this thing like that he would go back and like find lyrics and poems and stuff that he had written and take it and throw it into the music and write a song with it. And so it was like super inspiring to be able to look back at these things, but it really like made him shut down for a while, and that's why they had to delay it. So like, yeah, I kind of I think of this album as like the Lost Journal album because
that would have been a great name for it, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I love Glass Passenger. Yeah. That's such a cool name.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think like it definitely affected some songs. I think he talks about how American Love was like really affected by his journals and how he like started stealing things from different pages of one of his other journals for American Love.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I feel about Bloodshot too.
Yeah,
we'll talk more lyrics later.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like different stories, and I definitely agree with something you said earlier as well, that you compared the resolution and how clear the lyrics painted a picture of someone going through cancer treatment and recovery. But I think it is a little bit more buried in Bloodshot, and I definitely want to talk about those lyrics as well. Honestly, I've been doing this for 3.5 years. I can't believe I've never heard The Legend of the Lost Journal. That is really cool, and I will definitely be listening to that podcast.
In the podcast, he's immediately like, "Oh man, I shouldn't have said anything. Like, what if somebody finds it?" And then he sounds like he's regretting right away, like talking about it.
The thing is, the right person would have to find it, right?
Yeah.
Majority of people on Earth, if they found that, they'd be like, I don't know what this is. And unfortunately, likely it's been thrown away by now. But if an Andrew fan, someone who recognized something in there, unless it has a name on it, but I really doubt that. I mean, otherwise it probably would have found his way back. I mean, he's pretty Googleable. So if it had his name in it, I'm sure, I don't know. That's really interesting. That's like one of the more fascinating things I've ever heard on this podcast. So
yeah, kind of cool.
I like a good conspiracy theory and rabbit hole that we can go down.
Everyone should go listen to that podcast. It is fascinating.
You said it's the AP podcast, about 2009?
AP podcast. Yeah, I think you can only find it on Spotify. I could not find it on Apple Music.
Okay. I got Spotify.
Or Apple Podcasts or whatever. And then you just have to like scroll down until you find his name.
Okay, so if I can find that, which I'm sure I'll be able to, I'll link that in the show notes then, so people can find it easily. That's so cool. Thanks for sharing again. Well, yeah, that explains why the album was pushed back a few times. So you cleared that right up for me. When I learned that information not long ago, I was thinking about these EPs. We had the Ghost Overground EP in August, and then they dropped the In Valleys EP in September, only 3 weeks before the album came out. But I remember thinking about those two EPs more of like singles, right? Because Resolution was a single, Swim, which was on In Valleys, was a single. So it felt like just singles with B-sides. I was just always confused why they called them they didn't call them by their single name, the Resolution and Swim. They call them these other names, which are
What
very, very nice
what
names
was
for me.
the other song on that In Valleys? Was it Cell Phone or
It's actually Cell Phone, Sleazy Wednesday, and At Full Speed. We're all on there.
that's a great EP, man.
Yeah, it is. It's an excellent one. And
So cool.
so if Glass Passenger had not come out that year for some reason, that honestly would have been enough. Like we got the
Yeah.
Resolution, Bloodshot, Swim, and then those three, what I'm calling B-sides on In Valleys. Like that's a great collection of music right there. And
So good.
but it's interesting to me that they released so many quote unquote B-sides right before the album dropped. Songs that had nothing, well, I wouldn't say it had nothing to do with the album. Songs that were not on the album. But
Yeah.
so it wasn't necessarily a promotional tool. I don't know. But it was a lot of music coming out that fall by Jack's Mannequin. So I suppose they probably had these tracks that they were like, they don't fit on the album for whatever reason, but we want to release them because they're good. So that's what they did.
I think by then he was probably recognizing that some of people's like favorite songs were B-sides.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
like
for sure.
let's get ahead of these things, you know.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's very very quite possible. So the track we're talking about, Bloodshot, it was like the rest of these tracks actually. They were produced by Andrew and by Jim Wirt. Besides Andrew playing piano, keyboards, and vocals, Jay McMillan plays the drums, Bobby Raw plays guitar, Jonathan Sullivan on the bass, CJ Erickson with drums and programming, and then Jim Wirt and Bobby Raw are credited with background vocals. And then Andrew, Jay, and Jonathan are also credited with stomps and claps in the liner notes, which I thought was funny. Like, okay, we got to make sure
So
we credit
funny.
somebody for those. Something I didn't know I ever needed to know, but now I know that. So let's talk about live history here. I know it sounds like you've gone to a lot of Andrew shows. I definitely want to hear more about that. But this song surprised me at how many times it's been played in concert. Because when I think about the songs Andrew plays in concert regularly, this one has never been on my radar, honestly. But according to Setlist FM, this song was played 161 times by Jack's Mannequin, 17 by Andrew McMahon solo, and 38 times by The Wilderness, for a grand total of 216 times. Now, if you look in the context of all the songs listed on Setlist FM that Andrew McMahon plays, it kind of fits between Maps for the Getaway and I'm Ready, like right around that area, like 200s or low 200s. So
Wow.
yeah, those are songs that I think of when I think of Andrew McMahon. Like, what's he gonna play? Oh, he'll probably play Maps for the Getaway or I'm Ready, but I never think of him as playing Bloodshot. Like, does that number surprise you that he's played it over 200 times in the history?
Yes and no. Yes, because like you said, like it doesn't seem like it's like a super well known or
Mm-hmm.
top song of Andrew McMahon. No, it doesn't surprise me because it's a banger.
Uh-huh.
It's so good. It's
People want to
so
hear it.
good. And like seeing it live, like he clearly loves that song. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like this, yeah, it's so good.
That's cool. I wish I could remember hearing it, honestly, but I had to look in my concert history to see when and if I had seen it. He played it at the 10 Years in Transit tour on the stop that I saw him on in 2016. And he played all of Everything in Transit as expected, but then he played about half of the Glass Passenger on top of that. And I don't think he played anything for People and Things, unfortunately.
Oh man, he played television. That's
Oh,
how he
yeah?
started out on the Everything in Transit show that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. I think it was their last show. It was in Anaheim. Where was that? But yeah, he came out first and like just grabbed the microphone and was like, "Hey, before I get to Everything in Transit, I'm just gonna play a couple of different like Jack's Mannequin songs first," which isn't
Wow.
how he'd been doing it.
No,
And so
did
I
not
think
do
he
that
started
when I saw
off
him.
with television. And that was his first song, and then did a couple Glass Passenger, a couple more People and Things, and then finished with Everything in Transit from start to finish. And it was incredible. And I'm glad he did it that way too.
You know what? This makes sense because after you've played, 10, 12 shows playing the exact same set list, let's say, Everything in Transit,
Yeah.
I assume you want to shake it up a bit. You're going to have to play Everything in Transit because that's what the tour is, but maybe start with something else first. That makes sense that he needed to shake it up a bit.
He did like two shows that were add-ons that weren't like I have my poster back there.
I
Like
saw that,
these
yeah.
shows aren't even they aren't even like on the poster. Like they were added last minute.
Cool.
My friend's wife, shout out Kayla, grabbed tickets for her husband and my other buddy and me. So
That one was memorable for me because it was the first time we have young kids. That was the
mhm.
first time that we had someone that wasn't family watch our kids. in the area
Oh,
because we don't have family locally.
that's a big step.
Yeah, and it was on a work night too, and
Yeah,
a school night for
yeah.
my oldest. So yeah, that was like really unique, like asking somebody that we had only known a couple of years and be like, "Hey, can you watch our kids?" They had kids. They have the kids the same age, and we're still friends with them now. But yeah, so that
We
was unique.
That is unique. That is a big step. We
Yeah.
drove from Phoenix. We left at like 10 p.m., drove all the way to the beach, spent the day at the beach, went to the show that night, got in our car, drove all the way back to Phoenix because we all had work the next day. That show was exciting.
Okay. The first time this song was ever played in concert, I found out, according to Setlist FM anyway, is August 2008. So when that EP dropped in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and the last time it was played, I found interesting. It's been 5 years. It was February 2019
Mm.
on the Rock Boat 19, which is not the one that I went on. Yeah, it's been 5 years since he's played it. So I don't know. Maybe it's time for this song to come back to the set list. Is this a song that you want to hear when you go to a concert? Like, is this a song that you hope to hear?
Absolutely. The first time I saw Andrew was with Jack's Mannequin. I think early 2010, like March
Hmm.
2010. And they came to Phoenix. Fun opened up for them.
Oh wow,
And
good show.
yeah, it was like right after Aim and Ignite, like a year after. And then Nate Roos, the lead singer of Fun, is from Glendale. People were obsessed with the format. I don't know if you were into the format.
I wouldn't say I was really into them, but I had one of their albums.
People loved the format, and then they loved Fun. And so a lot of people showed up for Fun, and they were opening for Jack's Mannequin at the time.
Hmm.
And they were a great like pop show. They were fun.
See what you did there?
Yeah, I did. And then Jack's Mannequin came out, and I can't remember what songs they opened with, but Bloodshot was like one of the early ones.
Hmm.
And Bloodshot was kind of them. I feel like it was them announcing like this is a rock show. You were just at a pop show.
Hmm.
We're at a rock show now.
Hmm.
It was like third or fourth song. I tried looking it up a little while ago. I couldn't like find the details of that concert.
Hmm.
But like Andrew was immediately in the crowd by the fourth song.
Yeah.
And a lot of people I think that would have left who weren't as interested in Jack's Mannequin, I think stayed because that song
He like engaged them. He found a way to engage them
right
early.
away. Yeah,
Yeah.
right away. Like, I don't know if you've ever done that, but like go to a concert where you're super excited about the opening band and
Yeah.
then the next band comes out and you kind of give them like a try. You're like, yeah, I don't know about these guys.
Hmm.
And there are times where I'm like, we're staying. We're not leaving. I'm going to download all their music after this. I'm going to
Hmm.
look up like all the lore about their like albums and stuff. I'm now a fan. And I felt like that's how like by the time Bloodshot came around on the set list, that's how people were reacting to the show. So
That's
it
so
was
cool.
cool.
Did you get a chance to see the? I know you saw something corporate in the fall. Did you get a chance to see the New Friends tour recently as well?
I didn't. No, I
Okay,
was super disappointed.
but yeah, great show. But you were at something corporate in the fall with your group of friends, right? Like some of those
I
same people
was.
we were talking about earlier. Did you guys stay in Vegas for the weekend? Did you go to When We Were Young?
We didn't go to When We Were Young. We drove up there specifically just for the sideshow. It was so cool.
Cool.
Myself and three of my buddies went. I had a different experience at this reunion show because I had been really sick a
Hmm.
few days before, like 4 or 5 days before the show. And I was like still pretty weak. I wasn't like sick anymore. I wasn't coughing or
Hmm.
sneezing or anything, but I felt very weak. And so the show starts and kind of like felt out of it. I hadn't had anything to drink, hadn't had any drugs, nothing, but I felt like, as weird as this sounds, like I was like on something kind of,
Wow.
maybe someone was smoking around me. I don't know. But I felt kind
Contact
of
high.
out of it. And it was actually one of like my most like special experiences going to one of Andrew's shows because I got to just like look at the crowd around me and see how much people were just like over the moon excited for
Yeah.
this show. And I gotta like I gotta look up at you and you were like singing every single word
Oh
and
hell
like
yeah, I was.
so passionate about it. You were so
I was like
excited.
scream singing everything. Like,
I was with my three buddies and it had kind of been a bit of like a bummer year for two of them in particular.
mm,
One of them lost a parent
oh
and like just like probably 8 months before,
yeah.
9 months before. And so that was like that had weighed heavily on him for
Hmm.
the last year. And then my other friend, weirdly enough, was misdiagnosed with cancer
Misdiagnosed.
Misdiagnosed with cancer and like a really rare kind of cancer.
Whoa.
Like, hey, you're gonna basically like you're gonna die. This is very, very serious stuff. And he went like probably like 6 weeks, like, oh my gosh, this is it. And like all the panic and trauma of
Yeah,
like getting told you have bad,
sure.
bad cancer and you're probably gonna die.
Sharing with your family and the trauma that
Yeah, and
causes your
friends and
friend.
all
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah, yeah. Just like everyone was like really pulling for my buddy. And then like I don't know how much before the concert, maybe like a month or two, he's told, no, you don't have cancer anymore. And so I had seen like they
How in
yeah,
the world does
just
that
some
happen? I
um
can't even imagine.
yeah, it was a misdiagnosed in a lab like in Ohio or something like that, like far
Damn
away.
Ohio.
I'm pretty sure it was Ohio. Yeah,
Yeah,
he got
weird.
misdiagnosed, and then like when
Jesus.
they started doing like the actual tests and stuff like that at the Mayo Clinic, they found out, no, you don't have cancer. So I had seen like the world weigh heavy on both of these friends,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm sick at this, or not sick, but I'm like recovering from sickness at this concert and watching the rest of the crowd, and then
Mm-hmm.
watching my two buddies. And they were just like, this is like what Andrew McMahon's music does. It's just like pure joy, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like. And I was able to see that with these guys and like just see
That's so
like,
cool.
yeah, they were just so stoked to be there. And I hadn't seen like a lot of smiles from like either of them in like a year. So
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. That is so cool. That was a great experience.
well, I'd never done that at a show before where I still paid attention. I was listening to every song, watching them, but it was
Mm-hmm.
like 50-50 where I'm just paying attention to the crowd and I'd never
Mm-hmm.
done that. And it was like,
Yeah, that's
oh, the usual experience I have, this is what I look like usually. And
mhm.
that was pretty cool.
Let's talk a little bit of songwriting. So, honestly, I don't have much on the songwriting of this song, not knowing too much about it, but I'll tell you what I do know. Andrew wrote the song solo, like most of the songs from that era of his career, but I couldn't find much else. But here's what I did find. From a December 2007 interview with AbsolutePunk.net, this was well before the release of the album, December 2007, so they were actually recording it at the time. Andrew said, I tend to write mainly in a very autobiographical way, as most people already know by now. There are some songs, like on the last record, that are a bit of a departure from being purely autobiography, that venture into other themes or tell more of a story. There's a song called Bloodshot that's much more of a character study of other characters other than myself, but, I mean, that I possibly relate to. I know we're going to talk about that because, yes, I hear characters in this story, but I also hear things that I'm pretty sure he's referring to in his own life. So
Yeah.
obviously it was important to him enough to mention it in an interview 8 months before the album came out. But
Yeah, I'd never heard that interview.
yeah,
So that's interesting.
let's talk about the sound of the song because I said earlier, very unique. What's your perspective on the sound of the song? Like you said, it was what you wanted to hear when Glass Passenger was on its way.
Yeah, that first off, that Glass Passenger album is like so interesting. Like I
Yeah,
think you talked about it on that television episode where like for a while it was like the album he hated. I
yeah,
think he talks about that in the trailer for people and things.
he
Like he did
does.
not like the album.
Yep.
And I like have some theories why that is, but I don't know about you, but like Glass Passenger as a whole, there are some rays of sunshine, but it's dark
Yeah, it
and
is. Oh,
it's heavy.
it does get dark.
Where everything in Transit feels like a summer pop party
Yeah.
album to me. That's a breakup album, obviously.
There's some sad songs, but it has like an overall feeling of joy and fun.
Yeah, it's like I'm young, let's party
Yeah.
type of a thing. That's like the whole like vibe I get from that album. And I could talk about that album for hours.
Mhm.
But Glass Passenger to me kind of feels like the Hangover album. Kind of feels like it starts off pretty positive with like crashing, like lyrically that song still is kind of a downer.
Mhm.
Spinning, what's next? It's Swim next, which is like
Swim.
very much like a, yeah, Swim, like a very like anthem. And then yeah, I think as like the album like descends, it gets darker and darker. And I think Bloodshot is like the center of the album of like from the sound itself to the lyrics, like this was written in like a depression. This was written
Mhm.
like in a very sad state.
Yeah.
That's what I get from that song in particular.
Do you have any thoughts on his vocals? Because something I said, probably in a couple of episodes prior to this, is that something that threw me off when we went from Everything in Transit to the Glass Passenger era, is that his vocals sounded so raw, and one of
Yeah.
my guests theorized that maybe it had something to do with like actually being sick for a while. Like maybe it changed his, his voice a little bit, or maybe his voice wasn't in tip-top shape. I don't know. But to me, it almost felt intentional to make it sound more raw and not as produced vocally. And this song is one of them. And it's honestly something that bothered me at the time. And I've learned to look back and appreciate the uniqueness of songs like Bloodshot and how his vocals sound so different. But at the time, I wanted those pop vocals of Everything in Transit, and I wasn't getting that out of some of these songs.
Oh, I'm stoked for you to listen to that podcast because he talks about his voice in The Glass Passenger.
Heck yeah, man.
He says, I think the cancer and the sickness affected his vocals, but he says he likes it.
Yeah.
Like he very clearly liked how his voice sounded, and like it sounded more like mature and grown up. I think he describes it.
I feel like he leaned into that raw sound with this album.
Yeah.
Not every song has it. Like The Resolution, it's pretty clean vocals, pretty poppy, but I think it was intentional. Resolution's a very different song than Bloodshot, kind of showing both sides there. That's always how I felt about this, but also the dynamic nature of this song. We go from Annie, Use Your Telescope to Bloodshot, and then to The Dropout, So Unknown afterwards, which was more of a, I'd say like more of a traditional rock song. I don't know, maybe, sort of.
What is it? Dropout and then What Gets You Off? Both I feel like could almost be on, like sound-wise, almost on Everything in Transit. Lyrically, they fit perfectly with Glass Passenger lyrics.
I was more, at the time especially, songs that were really important to me on The Glass Passenger besides The Resolution were American Love and The Dropout. Those were like my top songs right there that I just listed.
Great songs.
But there was a lot of, like, I would say half the album that I don't feel like I understood. I was like, where is this coming from? Everything in Transit was a perfect album. There's these songs on this album that are not what I know as Jack's Mannequin. And what was Jack's Mannequin? It was Andrew McMahon and whatever he was making at the time. But I used to be more critical about that sort of thing. Like, I want the artist to sound like the artist, But he just had one album under his belt. Like, he didn't have a sound necessarily. But yeah, so that's why I struggled with this one. But even if you play this song up against other kind of more raw and dark songs on the album, like Orphans and Caves, they sound nothing alike. They don't sound like they're even on the same album, but somehow they were all there in the same collection. But I think now that I have the luxury of hindsight with this track, something that does occur to me, and I'm curious about your opinion. I feel like Bloodshot kind of paves the way for like what he did with The Wilderness later. I feel like it easily production, with
production
a different
sound-wise.
Yeah, with the production and the sound, I feel like it could have fit on something like Zombies on Broadway.
Oh no, definitely. This song in particular does sound something that could be on the Wilderness track. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was off-putting because again, it was unlike anything I'd heard from Jack's Mannequin or from something corporate for that matter, obviously. It just took some getting used to. And I'm talking years. It's taken me years to like let it resonate. And like, it's okay that Jack's Mannequin didn't sound like Jack's Mannequin that I expected.
It like starts off very eerie. Like the whole song is just like kind of like almost paranoid.
Mm-hmm. Haunting.
Yeah. Definitely. Like definitely haunting. Just like in a way of like where it's a rock song, but because of like the production, sounds, everything. I'm not a music guy, so I'm not gonna like describe it in the most like
same
basic terms.
Yeah, we're the same there. So
because of it, this actual song like sounds like he's not trying to go for like a hit. Like he's not trying to go for a song on the radio. Definitely
not with this song.
Yeah, this is like a weird little guy that he was super passionate about. Is this the first song he uses like hand claps?
That's
Is there anything before this?
Definitely not in something corporate.
That's why like it kind of fits as a Wilderness song for me because he uses a lot of hand claps, especially like
and stomps apparently.
Yeah. So I don't think there's anything before that.
Let me think. I don't know why. It's hard for me to hear a song in my head right now, a specific song in my head, but like not Miss Delaney, right? I remember that's kind of like got a beat to it. Maybe Made for Each Other? I don't know. I don't think so though. I'm kind of spitballing right now, but no, not that I know of. Not that I can think off the top of my head. Yeah, I think it's a whole different style, and I wonder where that idea came from. Yeah, I think you're right. He wanted to do something different. It was intentionally something different from anything else. And he was okay with that. He was like, this isn't a pop song. This is a
Yeah.
rock song that I'm feeling right now.
And even the clapping though is like it's not like wilderness clapping where it's like this is like supposed to get everyone involved.
Yeah.
It's like sporadic through the song. Like it's
Yeah.
like if you try to time when the claps are, it's kind of hard to do.
Huh.
It adds to
I
the
never noticed
song
that.
and like adds some like depth to it. I feel like some grit maybe. I don't know if grit's the right word. But like it adds to it, but it's hard to like time it kind of. It's very weird, very sporadic.
Interesting. I wonder if that's what one of the things that was off-putting to me when I heard this
Mm,
song and for years after, because I've noticed in the last decade, and it took me a while to realize this about myself, I like pop music. And I wouldn't admit it for the longest time. Like when I was a grunge kid and then I got into pop punk, I was like, oh, I like pop music, whatever. And I was like, you know what? But I think I like the poppier versions of those styles of music. And if I can't understand the vocals, if I can't sing along, and if something feels a little off, that usually turns me a little bit more off from a song than onto a song.
interesting.
And I hate to even admit it because like there's a lot of songs that wouldn't qualify if that was my only criteria. But obviously there's a lot of exceptions. There's a million exceptions to that rule I just said for me. But I think those little things, those little nuances in music sometimes put me off.
Are you more you're like a something corporate first, then wilderness, then Jack's Mannequin when it comes to the projects? Like you were a big something corporate. I remember that.
I am. It's really hard for me to rank honestly, and I'm not just saying that for the purpose of the podcast or anything. I honestly I don't know.
Interesting.
It changes
Okay.
sometimes because I consider Everything in Transit and North to be perfect albums. They're probably both in my top 5 of all time. So
Couldn't agree more.
yeah.
So good.
So I was very excited they played like half of North at that show in
Yeah.
Vegas. That was
I
fun.
didn't expect them to play that much, but yeah, they did.
I didn't either. I was very pleased with that. But they only have two full albums, so they had to play a good majority of it.
Yeah.
Well, you ready to talk some lyrics or what?
Yeah, let's do some lyrics.
Okay, yeah, because this is an interesting song. So I'm going to let you lead this one because again, I don't have the history of the lyrics. I never paid too much attention to the lyrics. Like I could tell you I sang along to the chorus when I was younger, but I never paid attention to the verses. I never took too much meaning from them. But when you read through these lyrics, you're like, there's a lot here.
Yeah, there is. I imagine this song being written kind of like in three parts. Okay.
Hmm.
So I imagine like the music coming first and then being like really excited about like how this song is coming out. I kind of imagine the second part. That's the first part, music. Second part, I imagine him writing like the first stuff, like the first the part about the girl. She walks to the mailbox each morning and night. Every day she begins, she's always one day behind, at least when it comes to the mail. She sits on the balcony paying the bills, her letters just ashing, her cigarettes onto the sill. I imagine that being written first, maybe like almost like in that lost journal
Hmm.
type of a thing. And then journal gets lost, time goes by, shuts down all production, and then he writes the second part about the like old war vet. That's kind of how I picture it because they're so different. I feel like there's nothing really connecting these two
Yeah.
characters except for maybe like that they're both in really dark places
Yeah.
in their life.
Yeah. Two different people in dark places. I agree with that. But yeah, I mean, these verses easily read like poems or and stories for that matter as well of these people. I also see not as much in the first verse, but in the second verse, I could easily say that's about Andrew, but replace painting the pictures with making the music, and I don't know. That's what when I read that verse just recently, I was like, oh my, that's Andrew McMahon. Like that's where he was. That was his headspace at the time,
Oh wow.
trying to write the songs, trying to make the music, between midnight and 4 a.m. and it wasn't coming out the way he had hoped. And he's talked about his writer's block that he had during the glass passenger writing era, and so that's what I saw in the second verse. I don't know if the same could be true about the first, that there's some of him in there as well. That's kind of what he alluded to overall in that quote. But even before I read that quote, I was like, I kind of think these lyrics are about him.
I can see that and I agree with that. I also kind of think this is part two. of Straw Dog.
Hmm.
That's how I kind of see it about Jessica, the girl on her front porch.
Oh yeah, I never put those wow. Yeah, it does kind of start off similarly. He's talking about Jessica. She's covered in a blanket on a Sunday porch, and this could easily be Jessica, the character of Jessica again.
This is, yeah, that's like a continuation. This is like, hey, her life's not really getting better. It's like kind of going, and I don't know who the real character or who the real girl's based off and everything. I
Yeah, I
think
don't
he's
either.
talked about her a little bit, but like
Hmm.
this is like the continuation. Like the parties have continued. Maybe the progression in the rest of her life hasn't continued though.
Yeah.
And so life is like getting a little bit more dark.
Hmm.
That's the way I think I've seen it for a lot of years. Did you read his book Three Pianos? I'm guessing you did.
I did, but it's been now 2 years when it first came out. I read it.
So I can't remember if it's in Three Pianos or if it's in like one of his many, many interviews.
Hmm.
But he talks about how like his first concert experience was Billy Joel, and I can't remember what the song is titled, but like the opening song sounds from that Billy Joel concert is like a helicopter,
Hmm.
and it's like a song about a Vietnam vet. Like it blew him away because he was like, "Is there like looking around? Is there a helicopter here?
Oh.
Like in the show?" Like I think he went with his uncle to the show or
Hmm.
something. He like clearly was very inspired by that Billy Joel song. I should have prepared more. I wish I had the actual song, but I think it's in the book.
He name drops it.
The song. It might have been just from an interview.
Okay, so he was really inspired by that performance, and yeah, maybe, and so maybe that's where he pulled lyrics from. He was pulling from that. That whole idea of the Lost Journal's super fascinating to me. I can't say that enough, and makes me wonder if some of this was stuff that he was writing in there, because some of it does feel random. Like, to you, do the choruses connect to the verses? I don't feel like they do directly.
The only connection I think I feel from verse to chorus is just this like life is a battle.
Hmm.
Life is hard and like you're always going to be kind of like even if life is good, you're at like a good point, clouds are coming. Like the
Hmm.
darkness is going to come back type of a
Hmm.
thing. So that's the connection I see. And like I also feel like that's more talking about his cancer and like he's clearly in like remission,
Yeah.
but there is such a fear of it coming back for any cancer survivor.
Yeah, I've always thought that the choruses were autobiographical here. And that's the part I sing along to. Like I love the melody in the chorus.
Yeah,
As much as I said earlier the song has been off-putting to me, it's not one of my favorites. I've always loved the chorus. There's a few songs on The Glass Passenger that weren't my favorites, but there's parts that I really like. And in this song,
sure.
it's that high and I'm so tired, that melody, however he sings that. I'm not going to try to imitate it.
Yeah.
I love, and then come on, look me in my bloodshot eyes. I love the way he sings that. That's just, and the music that goes along with it. Just that small
Yeah.
piece there. I haven't thought much about the verses, but I have thought about the choruses because, again, I used to sing them, and I still do. So I sing along
Mhm.
with it. I always knew this was a dark time for him, and he's struggling. There's a hill left to climb. He's so tired. Like, I love the way he sings that. He's so tired. And the clouds are all on fire. It's classic Andrew McMahon visuals there. Like, I'm getting the visuals in this
You're seeing
chorus.
it. You're seeing
Yeah.
it. Like he talks about in a lot of interviews, probably in the book, about how cancer like robbed him of his youth.
Hmm.
He feels like, which like
Yeah.
in some ways it's a little bit like, hey, you're still young, buddy.
Hmm.
You're in your early 20s, like
Yeah.
even after cancer. But I feel like he was like riding this high from everything in transit. Cancer hits. Obviously, it's like hitting rock bottom type of a thing, and then you're
Hmm.
trying to come back. And like a lot of Glass Passenger, I see through the eyes of like a guy like wanting to get back to that party stage, but it
Hmm.
just can't. That's like why I think of it like as if it's like a
Yeah.
hangover album because like it's like there's just no going back to that stage.
Yeah.
And like in this song in particular, I love the part when it like goes to like only piano and then like I think it's a synthesizer comes in
Oh,
and
yeah.
like
That's
once
such a,
again it's
I
like
love that part.
it's
That.
so cool. It's so awesome. Yeah, you did it perfect. That was it.
Okay.
But
I
like
might actually keep
that's
that then because, like, normally I
keep
don't
it.
try to make the
No, no, no.
noise.
That's it. That's it. And like it's such a weird little thing,
Yeah.
but that is the particular part that I think that he's like singing about his actual cancer. And I think he says that's the part where he goes, we wait in valleys while the clouds come in. We see no shadows because a shadow is all there is. And we climb and we climb. And to me, that's like, yeah, that's exactly the part where he's like talking about like cancer remission
Hmm.
and is it going to come back? Or in like a broader viewpoint for everyone else, like after a hard thing that's happened to you and life's starting to get more normal, is something going to come and strike again?
Hmm. And that
So
fear.
that's like one of, yeah, that fear. The whole part about like the vet painting in his like in his basement or whatever,
Hmm.
and like talks about like how like the portrait is just like bright red of blood and stuff. That like reminded me of like a couple different things. Like I said, that Billy Joel concert in the helicopter and like talk that song about the like the vet, the Vietnam vet. Also, like have you ever heard Mulligan Goes to War
Oh yeah.
from something corporate?
Hmm.
Yeah, I kind of get like the same, like, is this the same character, just older?
Hmm.
And also, he was a big Ben Folds guy. You
Yeah,
ever
he was. Yeah.
hear, I think it's Fred Jones Part 2?
I don't know that one. No.
It's off Rockin' the Suburbs.
I do know that album, but no, I don't remember that particular song.
Really sad song about a guy being like forced to quit his job. Like, it's like, hey, it's time to retire.
Hmm.
And packing up all of his stuff at his office and then going to like his basement and watching like old film reels and stuff. And I kind of get like the same feelings from those songs. I'm like, I always wonder, I'm like, did he hear Fred Jones Part 2? And like, did that, I kind of like made its way into his lyrics because the characters feel
Quite
very
possibly.
similar of just like, hey, we're getting near the end of our life. And yeah, he's like, he's just remembering his days in the war, which were not good.
Hmm.
These were bad, bad days. And so a lot of sadness around these characters, but also a little bit of like, whatever's coming, we can handle it
Hmm.
type of a thing.
Yep. There's still hills left to climb.
Yeah.
I always appreciate these, what I think of as Easter eggs in his lyrics, but I never would, I wouldn't have made this connection unless I specifically read through the lyrics. That quote you read, the bridge, "We wait in valleys." In Valleys was the name of the EP. Ironically,
Yeah.
that was released after, not the one with Bloodshot on it, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
He
he
does
kind
that
of did that
sometimes.
with yeah, Glass Passenger is
Yeah.
mentioned on a People and Things song.
And Zombies on Broadway is mentioned on Tilt at the Wind No More.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I never noticed that until I read through these lyrics. He says, "Come on, look in my bloodshot eyes," twice, and he says, "Come on, look up at the bloodshot sky," twice as well.
Yeah,
I like when he does that, when he just change, a lot of artists do that, but I think it's neat when they change a lyric there.
love it.
We've talked a lot about this whole idea of climbing, and I think the valleys that he mentions is part of that. Like I'm in a valley now, clouds are coming in.
Do you like the acoustic version better than the
I
original? I knew you would.
I do. Yeah, yeah, you called it, man. You totally called it. I do. I was listening to that live version. What was it? Buzznet live and
Yeah,
acoustic.
wasn't it?
Oh my gosh. That's where I got the word haunting from, because that's
Yeah,
what I think when I hear him play those piano parts. It's the piano's very minimal in that Buzznet version in the verses, and then it kind of comes in fully during the chorus, but it's a little bit more buried because of the singing and the acoustic guitar that Bobby's playing in that
yeah.
version. The piano's very minimal, but it's very haunting. I love it. I love
Very,
it.
very haunting. Also, that's why like it's such a cool concert live like song.
Hmm.
The band just goes at it like it's a rock song,
Yeah,
and he doesn't really play piano till like a minute into it or whatever.
yeah.
So he's running around the stage, pumping people up, and he's just running around stage. If you've seen
Hmm.
any of those live versions,
Yeah,
but that's why it's such a great like live song.
yeah.
He gets a chance to just like kind of like a lot of wilderness songs, like just run away from the piano and jump in the crowd and stuff.
So I'm going to link a video I had sent you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but there was live in Cincinnati, him doing the song back in 2009.
I did watch it, yeah.
Yeah, but I tell you what, like this conversation is definitely making me want to hear it. Like it's on my mental list. Like I want him to play Bloodshot next time I see him, just because I'm curious now to see. There's a lot of songs that more come to life for me in the live show. That happened a lot with a lot of the Zombies on Broadway tracks, and a couple of the Tilt the Window More tracks. To be honest, they really came to life for me in the live show. And I wonder if Bloodshot, Island Radio, that was like the prime example of like, I didn't really understand it on the album, but when I saw it live, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So, and I,
That was my wife's favorite song from
Yeah.
the Dashboard show.
Yeah, it's
Dashboard.
so much fun when he does that live.
Yeah.
That's a real crowd interactive. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
that's one of the ones that he rides the
Yeah, the duck or whatever
yeah,
it
the
is, the
duck.
blow
Yeah.
up thing.
I would highly recommend that BuzzNet version. Anybody listening, it's I'll link it in the show notes as well. But I'll link the regular live version as well for the comparison. Yeah, it's a whole different song when you break it down to an acoustic guitar and minimal piano to me, for better or for worse. But overall, I listen to this song. I almost always listen to the song we're going to talk about right before we record. So like an hour before we recorded or so, I played the album version of this song. And I was singing along to it, and I was like listening to the verses now that I was more familiar with what he was singing about. And I liked it a lot more than I remember liking it. Bloodshot is not a song. I've probably made this very clear. It's not one that I seek out. It's not one that I'm going to go listen to Bloodshot, put that out right now. But, in the Andrew mix, I'm like, yeah, it's cool. But I listened to it, like I said, an hour before we started recording, and I was like, yeah, this is a pretty good song. For some of these songs, it takes getting to know them, getting to know a little bit about them, which is weird because there's so much music I consume, so much music we all consume, that you don't learn things about the songs necessarily. You just hear it and you like it or you don't. But I think because I took the chance to dig in so deep to this, that it gave me a new appreciation for it. That's happened a couple times, actually, with Glass Passenger tracks. That happened earlier this year with both Caves and Orphans. I felt the same way as I'm talking to you about Bloodshot about those tracks. But after I dug in, I was like, I think I get them more now.
Yeah. Oh man, I love both those songs. Caves, oh, so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, very unique songs in the catalog, but it shows, these songs show where he was at that point as a human being, as a songwriter. It's interesting that you can look at something like Everything in Transit and see where he was. And then there's what happened after Transit was recorded, the cancer. And then you can look at Glass Passenger and be like, oh my gosh, something obviously happened to this guy to make this album.
I'm like a Jack's Mannequin guy first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those albums were being released for when I was like in junior high, high school, and then right when I was like, turning 19 years old and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so like very formative years. And he was just my like favorite artist. And like you said, you can see like where he was at. It's just so like autobiographical.
Yeah.
The Wilderness stuff, when I listen to it, except for like a few songs on each album, like one or two songs on each album that are a little bit more like story songs, like telling stories about other people, I hear that like joy that we talked about earlier that people feel at his concerts. I hear that in his lyrics and his sound, because I think like while we all have hard things that happen in our lives, I think you see like how happy he is being who he is and the family he has and everything. Like when you see his Instagram and stuff like that, you're like, oh, this is a dad.
Yeah.
This is a dad and a husband. And he's not like, in his personal life, he's not trying to be a rock star. When he's on stage, he's a rock star.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at his Instagram and stuff, you're like, this is a dad doing dad stuff. He's taking his daughter to school, like type of thing. He's making lunches and breakfast and stuff. And I love that. That's why I'm always rooting for Andrew McMahon. There's no pretentiousness to him. It's just like, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. I'm at a concert and I want to throw a cape on. I'm going to throw a cape on. And I love that, Yeah,
completely. He's so genuine. He's so himself. Well, thanks, Tanner, so much for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun. It's always a different type of episode when I'm talking to somebody about a song that I don't necessarily have the history and nostalgia and quite the love for as I do for some of the tracks. And I can let someone else kind of tell me about the song. And this is kind of how I saw that and how it played out. So I really appreciate your time tonight.
Absolutely. This is a lot of fun, Steve. I absolutely love that album. I love Bloodshot. And it's been fun. It's been fun talking about it.
Again, thanks so much for coming on. Anybody who wants to, chat me on Instagram. I always love talking to other people that are fans of Andrew McMahon, of course. I'm going to end with a quote from the song. Come on, look me in my bloodshot eyes. The clouds are all on fire.